Hello, and welcome to Conquering Finale. My name is Jason Lafredo, and today we are yet again taming time signatures. Specifically, we're going to look at independent time signatures in Finale. Now, when you think about independent time signatures, there are two ways to do it. The first is where the bar lines will line up. So you could have, for example, 12/8 in the violin here and 4/4 in the piano, and the dotted quarter notes would line up rhythmically with the quarter notes from the violin to the piano, and then at the end of the bar line would add up, right? The second way to do it is to have the bar line staggered. So, for example, if violin was in 3/4 and the piano was in 4/4, the bar lines would be after 3/4 notes in the violin, then after 4, and then another 3, and then another 4, and then finally after 12 beats, the bar lines would line up again, right? So that's staggered bar lines. Those are the two choices really for having independent time signatures. Now in Finale, the native way that Finale is going to want to do it is the first way, where they line up. Now I think this is probably because Finale likes to think in frames, and Finale likes to put its frames in rows and columns very neatly. And when you have staggered bar lines like that, it all of a sudden throws the frames into, out of sync with each other. And I think for whatever reason, Finale just doesn't want to compute that very well. So the way that Finale handles this is always to have the bar lines line up. We can do it the other way, but it takes a bit of a hack, and I will show you that. And it's, like I said, it's a bit of a hack, so sit tight. It's going to be a minute. But let me show you the first way, the native way in Finale, which is to have the bar lines line up. And this is actually fairly simple. We just need to go into the staff tool and double click on the violin. And similarly with the key signatures, there's in the bottom left corner here, the independent elements. All we need to do, I'm in the staff attributes box, by the way. All we need to do is click time signature. Okay. And now the whole violin part has an independent time signature. And if we go to our time signature tool, we can see the boxes appear, which just indicates that the time signature is indeed independent. And then so all we need to do is just click in here and change the time signature. 12/8, click OK, and now we've got two different time signatures. And we can see how that looks when we add notes. 12/8 notes, and we'll put some chords here. All right, so that's how that would work. See how it lines up nicely? And that's pretty much all there is to it. Now, one thing to remember is that if you need to change meters again at some point later on in the piece, you are going to have to change the meters in both the violin and the piano part, because they are independent from each other. So you're always going to have to change it in both places now. So just something to keep in mind. Now, if, for example, you have a long piece and you don't necessarily need independent time signatures for the whole thing, but you do need it for a small section of it, that can be done with a staff style. So let me just show you how to do that. So let's go in here and back to the staff attributes and undo what we did. So uncheck time signature. So now everything's back to 4/4. Time signatures are all linked together, right? Let's say, for example, we want these 4 bars to be independent time signatures in the violin, and these 4 bars only. So we're going to create a staff style. So define staff style. And I'm going to call it new. We're going to say independent meter. Okay. Now in the bottom left corner, you notice the key signature, time signature, note head font, independent elements again. And notice how everything has a minus sign next to it. It's not blank and it's not checked. It has a minus sign. What that is indicating is that there is no change. So when you apply this staff style, whatever state the time signatures are in these 4 bars, with a minus sign, no change will be made. If we check it, it doesn't matter what state they're in here, the time signature will always be independent. And again, if we uncheck it, whatever the state is here, the time signature will not be independent. So that's the reason for the minus signs here, right? That just indicates that there's no change. In this case, we want to have a check because we definitely want the time signature to be independent in this staff style. So we click OK. Now we're going to have to apply to score and parts and choose our independent meter. And you'll notice you get your staff style indication there. And then all we have to do is go into the meter. And again, you see your boxes indicating that these 4 bars are indeed independent. And again, we can just go in here and change to 12/8. And there you go. And you'll notice that it stays 4/4 at the beginning and then reverts back to 4/4 after the staff style is over, right? So that's how that would work. Similarly, let's go back. Sorry, let's just delete what we did here. Similarly, if you have an independent time signature on the entire piece for the violin and there's a section of music that you don't want an independent time signature for, we could do that with a staff style as well. So let's go back and pretend that we have an independent key time signature for the whole violin staff, right? We can see that here. Now everything has a box. Let's change it to 12/8 again. Dotted quarter. All right, so we've got 12/8 on the whole violin part. And again, let's just say that for these 4 bars, we want to go back to 4/4, or we want to retain what the piano is doing, or sync back up with the piano, as it were. So again, we'll create another staff style. New, let's call it No Independent Meter. And again, with this, we want to uncheck it so that no matter what state the independent nature of this, the time signature is in these measures, it will be turned off, right? So we've unchecked that. Click OK. And now we're going to have to apply staff style. Again, score and parts. No independent meter. Okay. And you'll see that it goes back to 4/4, which is the meter that the piano is in, right? The non-independent meter. All right, so there you go. And that's how you would do that. Pretty easy stuff. Let's just go back. Let's just get everything back to normal. We want to, yes, undo that. Okay. No staff styles. This is not independent. Great, great. Okay, so that is the first way. That's the easy way to do it. Bar lines lining up. Now, sit tight, because we're going to get into where the bar lines don't line up. All right. Now, for this example, to illustrate this, I'm going to use an example where we've got the violin in 3/4 and we've got the piano in 4/4. So we need to do a little bit of math, because we're going to have to find some common ground between the meters. And whatever independent meters you're using, you're going to have to do this type of math. So in this example, 3/4 and 4/4, the commonality is 12, right? 4 measures of 3/4 will give you 12 quarter notes, and 3 measures of 4/4 will give you 12 quarter notes. So we're going to have to think in 12s. And if you think about what we've been talking about with meters, and the fact that Finale will always put whatever number of beats in the meter, despite what you can have it displayed as, right? So there's 2 ways to do about this. 2 ways to go about this. The first is to create, in this instance, 12 measures of 1/4 measures, or 12 1/4 measures. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Show you how to do this. So we've got 4 right here. Let's add 8 more. Insert measure stack, 8 bars. Okay, so now we've got 12 measures. And of course, we're still going to want these meters to be independent, because we are going to, even though they are going to be 1/4 measures, they need to display as something different. So independent elements, time signatures. Great. Right. So in the case of the violin, we're going to call this 1/4, right? Except we're going to use more options, use a different time signature for display, 3/4. Okay. So now it looks like we've got 3/4 here. It looks like we've got a lot of measures of 3/4, but in reality, we know we have 12 measures of 1/4 here. And we're going to do the same thing here. We want this to be 1/4. More options, use a different time signature, 4/4. All right. And again, it looks the same. It looks like we've got 12 4/4 bars, but in reality, it's 12 1/4 bars. And we can illustrate this by putting in some notes. Right. 12 quarter notes. I just dropped my mouse. All right. And then 12 quarter notes here. I got so excited, I threw my mouse off of my desk. All right. So we've got 12 1/4 measures. It looks like it's 4/4, okay? And obviously, we've got a lot of extra bar lines, so we're going to have to deal with that. Now, we know that in the measure tool, we can double click here and create an invisible bar. But what that's going to do is it's going to create an invisible bar for the whole score, which is not what we want, because it's not always going to be invisible on every 1/4 bar, right? For the example of 3/4, we only want these 2 bar lines to be invisible. But in 4/4, we want these 3 bar lines to be invisible. So the best way to do this is with another staff style. So I'm going to define a new staff style. New. I'm going to call it no bar lines. All right, and we're going to make it copyable. That's important. And we're going to find items to display. There is an option for bar lines. Again, minus means there's no change. Check means that there is a bar line for sure. And nothing means that there's definitely not a bar line. So that's what we want to do. We want to uncheck bar lines. Okay, click OK. And for these two bars, apply staff style, score and part, no bar lines. And there you go. And now it looks like we have a 3/4 measure here. We're going to do the same thing in the piano part, except we're going to take these 3 bars and apply that same staff style, no bar lines. And now it looks like we've got a 4/4 bar here. And of course, if you know how to use the filter, we can make a little bit short work of this. If we use the edit filter, choose none, and we're going to look for staff style because that's the only thing that we're going to copy. We're going to copy the staff style. This is I pointed out why it was important to make sure it was copyable. Click OK. Copy, paste, copy, paste, and paste, right? So now we've got what looks like 4 3/4 measures, right? Although we know better, it's 12 1/4 measures. We're going to do the same thing here. We're copying the staff style. Copy, paste, copy, and paste. There you go. All right. Oops, I didn't do it in the left hand, so sorry. Just paste that. Paste that. All right, so now we've got 3/4 over 4/4, except you'll notice a big problem, which is the left hand, which is resting, and we've got 4 whole bar rests. So we're definitely going to have to hack our way around that. So the best thing to do here is just enter a rest and hide it, rest and hide it. Now we'll enter a whole rest. It's going to tell me that there's too many beats, so we'll leave it alone. And then create another rest and hide it. And then, of course, we're just going to have to manually move it over somewhere around there. And that'll work. All right, and of course, we can uncheck the filter, and if we copy this whole thing over, we'll get our rests. All right, so that is how you would do an independent time signature that way. All right, I would call that, let's call that smallest common numerator. In this case, it's 1/4, right? Because we're creating 12 measures of 1/4. All right, so that would be the smallest common numerator of doing that. There's another way to do it, which I would call the largest common numerator. Now, in this case, 12. So if you think about it, we have 12 1/4 measures. We could also have 1 12/4 measure, right? So in the second system, let's delete 3 measures here. So we have 1 bar, okay? And we're going to call this top one, we're actually going to say this is 12/4. Okay, and again, show more options. We want it to display as 3/4. Of course, it's not going to show anything because I've got 3/4 displayed all the way through here. Same thing here. We're going to call this 12/4. More options, display as 4/4. All right. And just so we can show you what's going on here, I'm just going to always show time signature in this measure for a minute. All right, so there you go, 3/4 and 4/4. But it looks like one measure. And of course, if we enter quarter notes here, 11, 12, and we can enter our chords. Nine, 10, 11, 12. All right. So now it looks like we've got one big measure, and it's incorrect. We're going to have to add some bar lines here, okay? There's a couple ways to do this. Now, Finale in the measure expression tool actually has, in the miscellaneous category, this is a default file, by the way, so you should be able to find this in your default file. In the miscellaneous, it has these 4 characters here that you can use. They're actually shapes. If you select it and assign it, you've got a bar line pretty easily. Okay, the one issue with this, of course, is that it's not going to work so well in a piano part, right? Because it's not going to go all the way down here. You have to put it here, and then you have to add another one and drag it. It's kind of a pain to do it this way, right? And you do another one and then drag it, right? And then you have to kind of get in there and get it all lined up. It is a way to do it, but it is a pain. So I have a better way, I think, which is to use the line tool instead. Now, this in the smart shapes, there is a straight line. It's right about here, 2/3 of the way down, the line tool, and we're going to check that. Now, one thing to note is that if you have certain settings for your bar lines, a certain thickness or something, you're going to want to make them the same so that they look, so this one at the end will look the same as the ones in the middle. I'm getting really specific here, but I think this is worth it. So if you go into your document options, find bar lines, thin line bar thickness. I have mine set, this is in inches, to 0.01166, okay? So remember that number. And we go back to our Smart Shapes tool, go to Smart Shapes, and we're going to go to Smart Shape Options, and we're going to find in this right-hand side line thickness. Now, if we make this number the same as that other number, then this line will be the same as our byline. So it's 0.01166, right? All right, so now whatever line we create after this point will have that thickness. All right, so I've got my line tool here, and all I got to do, and actually this helps if you're really, really zoomed in pretty far, is after 3 beats, very carefully draw let me try that again. Very carefully draw a vertical line, and then move it into place. Now, handily, it's attaching it to this note right here. So it, the bar line will move as if and when you have to move this note left or right or something. And then again, same thing on the piano part. 1, 2, 3, 4 beats. We're going to put it here very carefully. Oops. Draw a line. If you hold down Shift, it'll constrain your drag to vertical. So that's a better way to do it. And then make sure that you get it exactly the right height. And then find the center and move it a little bit to your left. All right. And now you have a bar line with a smart shape. And of course, you don't have to draw every single bar line. Again, we can use the filter, edit filter, and this is a smart shape. So select none, except for smart shape attached to, I think that's attached to the note, right? Or is it the beat? I think it's the beat. It doesn't matter, just use them both. And we know it's attached to this first one, so we'll copy this this fourth quarter note, I guess. Copy, and then put that at the next spot, which is right there. And then the next spot, which is right there. All right. Oh, and what I should have done with the piano, is this should have gone all the way to the bottom of the left hand. Right? Obviously. And we know that's attached to this beat, so we just copy. I still got the filter on. Copy. 2, 3, 4. Paste it to this beat. And there you go. And now we have the other way of doing independent time signatures where the bar lines are staggered, using what I would call the largest common numerator. And then one more problem is that you'll notice that, again, we only have one rest in the left hand because, again, Finale looks at this as a 12/4 bar, right? So we're going to actually have to add 3 whole rests, and it's not going to put them in the center like it normally would with a bar rest. It's going to put it in to the left because it is actually a whole rest. So we've got to manually move those as well. All right. And there you go. That's how you would do that. Whew, that's a lot. I know it's a lot, but it is possible to do this, and it gets tricky when the math gets a little bit more complicated than 3 and 4. And obviously, at some point, you have to find the common place where the bar line ends, and hopefully that's at the end of the system most of the time. All right. A couple other things I want to talk to you about a little bit is that this is going to screw up your bar numbers. All right. Which, of course, if you're using bar numbers with music like this, where your bar lines are not lining up, you're going to have to do some soul searching and figure out how you're going to want to display anyway, right? So let me just show you what this is going to look like. I have this turned off, so let's just show this on every bar, right? So what you end up is, because this is all 1/4 measures, right? We have 12 measures of 1/4, and again, this is only one measure, so we only have one measure here, right? There is a way, for example, if you're using the smallest common numerator version of doing this in the top half here, there is a way to very easily hide all of these measures here very quickly. We just select them with the measure tool and double click, and just in this behavior on the bottom right, if we uncheck include in measuring numbers, they'll all disappear and we'll go from 1 to 2, okay? And then again, you're going to have to decide how you want to do this. I was thinking about the best way to do this in particular, and what I might do in this situation is do, this is measure 1, this is measure 2. This right here I would call 1A, or I would call 1A. I would call this 1B. I'm sorry, I would call this 1A, this 1B, 1C, and 1D. I would call this 1A, 1B, and 1C, right? So how would you do that? It's fairly simple. If we go to our edit measure number region, what we're going to do is we're just going to deal with the A right here. So I'm going to call this includes measure. Starting measure number 1 is fine. We can actually add a suffix to the measure number, so let's just say A. And what that will do is we'll put a 1A at the beginning of whatever the beginning of this system right here, right? And then with the rest of the bars, you're going to have to fake it. And the best way to do it is just with a measure expression. And I already had something set up ahead of time. I've got my B set up here. It's the same font and positioning as the measure numbers, and it's attached to the note here, right? And measure D, and then here we can do B and C, right? And we can do the same thing down here, B, C, D, B, and C. All right, now this is not the right way to do this. I really have no idea. This is just a way to do it. That's one way to look at this, I suppose. But if you're writing this type of music, you're going to have to make some sort of creative decision about this anyway. And if this is how you want to do it, then that's how you do it. Let me just look through my notes. Yes. Now, one final thing. Okay, I know this video is getting very long. One final thing. This will screw up linked parts sometimes. So I'm just going to show you what happens in the violin part here, for example. You'll notice right off of the bat, right? The second version of this is where we have the one long 12/4 bar. The second version looks okay, but in the first version, we didn't the bar lines didn't all disappear, and there's a reason for this, and this has to do with the staff style. There is a bug in Finale in which the staff styles will not copy and paste to the linked parts. They will only copy and paste to the part that you are copying and pasting in, right? So the way to fix this is go back to the score, and with the staff tool, select all, and right-click, and use the function called Use Selected Staff Style for Score and Parts. This is just indicating that, yes, I copied the staff style from here to here and from here to here and here to there. And yes, I want that copying to have taken place in both linked parts and the score. So now if I go back to violin, now it's there and it's appropriate, all right? In the other version of it, let me go to the piano part. This is another issue that you may end up having. First of all, if you don't use the same spacing, like in this example we had, remember this is 1 measure, 2, 3, 4, 5 measures on the system, and if you don't go and move that to another system, the spacing of the rests are not going to be correct, right? Go back to, you can see how the rests are all screwed up, so we got to fix that. And then finally, because these lines are attached to the top and they have a fixed length, sometimes if the distance between the staffs is different between the score and the parts, you'll notice that the bar lines will not follow, right? So there will be some manual adjustment here if you have to, if you're doing something like this, and so that's just a couple of disadvantages to doing this and using linked parts. The biggest disadvantage to having music like this and having it and doing it with linked parts is multi-bar rests. They will not work ever if you do this, because remember, in the violin part in this first system, this is 12 measures. This is not four measures of 3/4. This is 12 measures, and this is 3 measures. And again, this is 12 measures of 1/4 time, right? And in the second system, if you do it this way, this is 1 measure, right? So if these 3 bars were empty, you wouldn't get a 3/4 bar followed by a 3-bar multi-bar rest, right? You'd get a 3/4 bar followed by a bunch of rests, and that's a problem. So again, with linked parts and doing this type of independent time signature, it is just simply not going to work. If what you're doing gets into that sort of thing, the best thing to do is probably to extract your parts and rethink doing your parts in a different way. Just dealing with the score in one file and dealing with the parts in another file is probably the best way to make that work. All right. So wow, I covered a lot. That was independent time signatures. Again, 2 ways to do it. Where the bar lines line up is the easy way. Where they don't line up, as you can see, it took me probably I'm thinking 18 minutes or so to actually explain that to you. So it is involved, but it can be done. And hopefully this has been helpful. Whew. So thanks for watching, and that's it for time signatures, and I'll see you on the next one.